So here we are, guys, with the Dora Wings 1/48 Messerschmitt Bf 109 A/B. This is a really good kit, to be honest. For a short run kit, this would be one that I would suggest for people to start on the short run journey, personally. It's very forgiving. It does go together very well. There's barely any seam lines or anything like that you have to do and worry about. It all really clamps in quite nicely. The wing root join is really good. The fuselage join is very good. A little bit of work around the tailplane section on the horizontal stabilizers, because underneath this leading edge wraps around and then the bottom part sticks into it. So you've got an unnatural seam there, which I didn't worry too much about because this isn't really built for anything other than my collection. So I know that there should be panel lines underneath there, but I just used super glue and sanded it smooth and didn't really care about it too much. There's a few little problems for if you really want to get an accurate model out of the box. If you follow the instructions, they might take you down the wrong route. It's all in the box. Everything's in the box, actually, as far as I can tell. To do some of the early variants, even if you check your references, I think you can get some of the V variants out of it, and also you can do the A's and the B's. The schemes in the kit are accurate schemes. So you've got two A variants, so you've got 610 and 615. It's a Spanish Civil War boxing, that goes without saying. And then you've got two B variants, which are B2s, which is 627 and 636. Now, straight out of the box, the marking schemes seem to be correct for the 2A versions. They're a little bit off for the B versions, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But you're pretty much there. It does some quirky things in the colour call-outs. You've got the correct profile, as it were. There's no aerial and all that sort of thing, but as you go through the build, it does tell you to add an aerial and add a few things here and there which weren't present on Spanish 109s. I think that's because it's carrying over from a generic B boxing it's a rebox of the AMG kit. But all of that aside, the kit is extremely detailed. You get resin landing gear doors for the A variant specifically, which has a completely flat bottom to the landing gear door. You get resin wheels, you get a resin crank handle, resin machine guns, resin oil cooler, and a resin gun sight. Then you've got film for the instrument panel with an etched fret covering the cover for the instrument panel, and then quite a few other small parts are on that etched fret as well that go into the cockpit. And all over the sprues you've got plenty of options. You can do the large wooden propeller, which you get in this one, which it actually calls out for all these aircraft to have. And I also think you can actually convert the A's to have the two-bladed variable pitch over the wooden fixed pitch, because although they arrived with the wooden fixed pitch, they were then changed over to that. B's, I believe, were straight with the variable pitch like this, but the early versions you could change the wooden prop out for this propeller as well, which is it's not fixed. It's adjustable pitch, so it's one of those. It obviously moved the pitch. So that's a nice feature. You get a few options around the cowling as well. Some of the patterns for rescribing are a little bit off. It says to have a seam line going right through. There isn't a seam line there. It doesn't open up as a hatch. It comes off in parts like that as sort of hoops, as it were. I'm getting confusing myself here slightly. The decals were extremely good out of the box. I have got a tiny bit of carrier film showing here on the numbers, because that was one big block. Nowhere else. The roundels were great, extremely thin, went down really well. So I would suggest possibly, if you really want to eradicate any carrier film, then just try and cut around the numbers, or use the glossing technique. I did gloss up on it to try and sand it down, and then didn't quite do it enough and started sanding into the decals. So I thought let's leave well enough alone and try not to worry about it. Chipping on the propeller was done with the hairspray technique, so sprayed it silver, MRP silver, and then just hairspray straight over the top, and Tamiya XF1 black on the top of that, and then tried to just use water to break it up. It came off a little bit too much. It should be more of a blended, sort of aged, almost sanded kind of effect. So I could have done that a little bit better, I think. But overall, I'm very pleased with it. So we'll talk about the reasons behind the colour choices that I made now. And then at the end, leave you with some pictures of the model. So this is the camo scheme that comes with the kit, and this is the one I did here. So it's 636, which is flown by Harder, is the pilot, with the first J88 in Spain. So as you can see, it gives you a splinter pattern, which is actually a sort of hand-painted splinter pattern, which is pretty correct. Although they've got ROM 63 and 62, which it's not. It's a 70-71 scheme over 65. And the 63 area is what is the dark, is Schwartz green. So it's the black green, which is 70. And then the lighter areas are what are 71, which is the dark green. So that's what I've sort of done. And we'll take a look at the book that I mentioned now, and see how I came up with that. So this is the book that we've mentioned on the channel before, and this is where I've managed to find pictures of 636, very limited, and there's a few more from the group. So usually the Spanish Civil War 109s are known for being in the overall ROM 63, the grey, whether it be a light grey, ROM 02, that's your sort of pick. I personally like to do it as a 63. So this is 636 here. Now I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of glare. Obviously it goes without saying that obviously these pictures are for this book. So if you like what you see, you know, do consider going out and grabbing this book. It's a great resource for 109s in Spain. It's not going to give you much else other than that. That's what the whole book's about. So this is 636 a bit later on. We've got victory bars on the tail, and you can see where the confusion starts, because it really does look like one colour. It looks like it's dark green, or it could be ROM 63, something like that. So it's very hard to find out, and this is pretty late on, so it's covered in dust, and you can tell it's later because it's got the victory bars. So if we go on a bit further, we've got a few more from this group. There was only a handful that were painted in this colour scheme as a trial, and then they went over to the standard ROM 63 grey. So there's another one, 624, and you can see the weathering on the propeller as well, which that's not how mine's gone. I probably could have sanded it back or something like that, might have been better. I did the hairspray chipping technique, and it didn't quite do what I wanted. There's a great picture as well, showing you a close-up. Again, hardly any exhaust staining, but there's a tiny bit, just a very faint bit going like that. And there you can see the crank handle is in position as well. More chipping on the propeller. And again, a few more. All looks like one complete scheme, really. It's very hard to see the splinter pattern, but I suppose here is the one that really sort of cemented it for me. That is obviously a hand-sprayed camo scheme, and then the dark bit is Schwartz grey, so it's the propeller grey. Schwartz green, sorry. God, I'm getting confused with it. I'm going to ditch the German names. So it's the black green ROM 70, and then it's dark green ROM 71, and it's 65 underneath. That's how we're doing it. And here you can see the pattern as it goes through. So I've sort of loosely copied that. A few more here of the type before we quickly change over. We got 31 there again, extremely dark, but you can see there's an outline here of the loose pattern. Not really following a Luftwaffe pattern at this point. They're just kind of basically spraying it how it's meant to be in a very loose pattern, and then we start to move on into the overall ROM 63. And even some of these camouflage ones were painted over as well, and you can see it becomes a lot more standard. And notice that there's barely any panel lines. This is probably possibly even the silver white one, or silver wise as it says here, which was known to have putty applied to the aircraft. A few more going on there, as we can see, and then we basically run right into the standard colours. So if we just scroll back over, there was one more picture here, which again sealed the deal for me, and it's that one there, and that is 636. This is very early on. You can see the difference in the pattern. There's actually quite strong. You can see there's a light colour here behind the 6 and the 3 and the 6, and then the dark green goes on the spine, and there's actually no victory bars there either, so it must be quite early on. So resources and references are vital when you're doing things like this. Most kits, you know, you can do straight out of the box, but I always like to look into the aircraft itself or the tank or whatever I'm doing, and try and research it. And you can never beat a photo. It always it supersedes everything. When you find the photo and it's there in black and white, literally, you know, it's undeniable. So there we go. Hopefully that was helpful for you if you were, you know, interested. My hope is that this was just an interesting video. You know, Spanish Civil War is my thing. It's my first one back to this since any of my Telford builds. Although you've been seeing some of those over Christmas, they were all built before Telford. So it was nice to get back into it with this one, just building this one behind the scenes, and really enjoyed it. So I didn't mention, I think, so I probably should, the MRP colours that I use for this is ROM 71, 70 and 71 for the camouflage over the top, 65 underneath, and Mr. Colour ROM 02 for the cockpit and wheel wells. So that was what I used. And I'm very pleased with it. I think it's gone down very well, and it gives that very subtle, that, you know, in the different light it sort of shows up the splinter pattern, and then at the same time just looks like one green, which is exactly what it looks like in the black and white pictures. So I'm very, very happy with it. So hopefully that's been enjoyable to you, and you'll stay tuned now for the pictures that are about to follow. So as always, if you like what you've seen, please consider giving the video a like. If you want to stay tuned and check out more content from the channel, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.